American, and then when it comes to ethnicity, when you fill out the application, it's usually if you're Native American or Hispanic first, and then whatever else after. And then if you say yeah, it's like a tax write-off to the company. That's why I was.
Oh, I did not know that. No. As far as the ADA is concerned, it's not that. The only time so Target, was actually they lost the lawsuit. Okay, whether you agree with the judge or not, doesn't matter. They lost the lawsuit, and that really set a precedence of saying, oh, so from now on, online banking, online shopping, PayPal, eBay, and so on, they all have to meet the minimum requirement of being accessible. People, who cannot see, people who cannot hear, people who have dexterity problems, they all have to be able to access the content and be able to experience the same experience or as close as possible, with the rest of us. Okay? So that's a really kind of change of culture because, before 2003 or so, people did not consider websites, as quote unquote places. But now we are changing that and saying, oh, you know what, those are considered places as well. Yep.
So how did Target change their website?
Well, the details I cannot really get into too much in this class. You have to take cisw370 to understand, technically how it is done. But it can be done, and it can be done without a lot of money either. That was the whole thing. Was Target just refused to do anything, even though it is not going to cost them that much money. So that was the whole thing, and that really infuriated the NFB, and they decided to sue them instead of just prodding them and say, well, maybe it's a good idea to do this. No, we're going to sue you. Yep, go ahead.
Does Walmart also have is ADA compliant?
I'm not aware of any lawsuit against Walmart, so I'm guessing their website is already ADA compliant. Yeah, Walmart is usually pretty good with this sort of thing. It's a huge company, and they have all the resources they need in order to make any website accessible. Yep, go ahead. There was another hand. No? Huh?
I can ask a question.
Go ahead.
We were looking at the BlackBerry earlier, and you were talking about how it had like a microkernel operating system. Do you think that will actually end up being a selling point for BlackBerry, seeing as mobile security is now becoming an issue?
I don't know. I mean, a microkernel design, makes it more modular. From the perspective of like a nuclear plant, it means you don't have to shut down the computer just to update certain portions of the operating system. The interesting thing is Windows NT, which is also the core of all the versions of Windows since XP. Since XP it became the customer version or the consumer version of Windows as well. The NT kernel is actually a microkernel as well.
Okay.
Yep. So it doesn't really help in terms of security because there are many other factors that would influence the overall security of a device. It's not just the kernel itself, but also the application programs, how they set up permissions, and so on and so forth. I would say that's actually more important than the kernel itself. All right, so we'll go ahead and kind of come back to this topic and talk about the BlackBerry. So they have a whole bunch of highlights of the hub. Peek into the BlackBerry hub from any app and see your messages and conversations, and so on. BlackBerry member, balance, calendar. So these are all the apps that are built into the BlackBerry, the new BlackBerry, and also your hardware devices. NFC stands for Near Field Communications. Which makes it possible to pay, when you go to the new student center and you want to pay for your food. So most of the time, I would have one hand holding my soft drink, the other hand holding a tray. So I kind of need to, I need a third hand to get my wallet out and stuff like that. With NFC, and if you configure your phone to make use of NFC and they accept NFC type payment, you can just walk by. It's like you stop, and then the person operating the machine can see that, okay, I'm getting your payment, and then you just keep walking. Yep.
Is that the same technology that's used when they have your card that I guess you put it on a panel of some sort and it automatically takes it out?
That may be, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure because.
It's like one of those fast-paced systems
Yeah,
chicks used to
yeah.
have on their debit cards. Yeah,
Okay.
something like that.
So-
Little RIFD chip.
That sounds like it's gonna springboard like all kinds of. What happens if
Security
you
problems?
accidentally walk by something and you don't mean to pay for that? How are they gonna connect? You know what I mean? How are they gonna connect it and say, okay, this is yours?
Well, they know who you are, okay, because, and the question is, how do you authorize the payment?
Right.
That's the question. How do you authorize the payment? And I think you can authorize the payment, by either a button. Yep, go ahead.
I was going to say on that subject, they're working on scanners that actually trace the veins in your hands because those are more unique and reliable than fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to authorize a payment, you just walk through a scanner
like
and
it.
then you just
I'm gonna
go
live
up
in
to
the
a
hills.
screen that says, do you want to authorize this? Just put your hand up on the scanner. It'll
But
read it.
remember, I got both hands full already. I don't have my third hand.
I know, right? Well, retina scan or something.
Retina scan, Well, they can do DNA too, just spit here, That will authorize the payment.
DNA.
Yeah. Then somebody's going to take your paper cup away and go like, haha, now I got your DNA. Now you're going to pay for my food. Yep.
My phone has NFC, and
Uh-huh.
I've not used it to make payments, though I have an app on it to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But I have noticed that, like when I'm transferring files between other people who have NFC or things like that,
Mhm.
that you're always, when you pair with that device or whatever it is, it's already asking you, is that all right? So I don't think you can just walk by something and pay for it.
Okay. Well, that's just the programming part, okay? Because the device itself, is making the
You're
connection.
right, it could happen, but at the same
Mhm.
time, you have to turn the NFC on,
Right.
and you have to pair with the device, just kind of like Bluetooth,
Okay.
and then you can do what you're doing.
I would imagine they can do it, using your Bluetooth headset. You can
Yeah.
use your Bluetooth headset to voice, command your device
Mhm.
to say, okay, yes, authorize. Okay, the cell phone would use Bluetooth to ask you and say, this organization, with this ID is requesting this much as a payment. But do you want to authorize? And then you can say, yes, authorize.
The thing I also noticed is I have Wi-Fi Direct, which can be used pretty much in the same capacity
Mhm.
between other Wi-Fi capable devices,
Uh-huh.
which is, I wonder why you would use NFC instead of Wi-Fi Direct, because Wi-Fi Direct has a larger range of things that can connect to it, and
Mm-hmm.
the distance that it can go is much farther.
Yep. Well, Wi-Fi and also even Bluetooth, operates at about is it 2 gigahertz or so? 2.4 gigahertz, and that's a frequency where things can go a long way, and that's why I'm digressing more and more here. That's why some of you might have heard of Wi-Fi or Bluetooth sniping. And people built these, highly directional antennas, or antennae, as plural, and they put it on a gun stock and a big old scope, just like a big gun and a sniper gun, and then they can snipe from about at least 2 miles away. And this becomes a problem in cities kind of like Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, where you have a lot of high rises and a high concentration of offices and other places where there's a lot of Wi-Fi networking. Because someone at a rooftop of one building can snipe basically a very long range in a lot of different buildings. And if any network is not secured properly, they can hack into something that is about 2 or 3 or even more away, depending on the setup of the antennae. And so so someone can have a computer hacked by someone who is like a few miles away, which is not even visible using your bare eyes. So that became kind of an issue, and I think it's still going on. People are still doing that, but I think on the other hand, people are getting more aware of these kind of problems, and they try to secure their websites or their Wi-Fi networks a little bit better than before. I was also told, this is kind of interesting too, since we're on this subject, I was also told that CCSF, City College of San Francisco, set up their Wi-Fi to have public IP addresses, and they also make it so that if you once you join the network, it is the same network that they do all the other types of control, like HVAC control and stuff like that. And the Wi-Fi station was up on a hill, at the top of a hill, so it has a really good range, around the entire campus and beyond. So that became a big security concern as well. Yep. So Wi-Fi opens up all kinds of security possibilities or concerns depending on which way you look at it. So my interest in BlackBerry's comeback is this part here. What are they going to do with apps? Okay, why do you choose Android? Why do you choose iOS over, let's say, Windows when you buy a phone? How many apps Windows has at this point? They might have some, okay? They might have some, but they don't really have a whole lot. How many apps can you get from the App Store for Apples, for iPad, iPhones?
Good number.
Couple thousand, 2,000, 3,000 apps?
Oh, way more than that.
Almost a million.
I wouldn't say a million. It's probably somewhere in the tens of thousands, if not 100,000. Go ahead.
I'm kind of confused. I have a cellular Android, and every time that I am at home, I set up the setting of the cellular as a Wi-Fi. And once I do that, they use my internet from the house. So when you say the Wi-Fi and internet, but what does it mean? Because as long I am using my house, my cellular application is internet.
It's just confusing with the Ethernet.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because when we say Ethernet, it kind of implies it is wireless, because what is ether?
In the air.
It's in the air. It is the empty space, right? People used to think empty space has something, and it's called ether. So it is. I think it's actually natural to think that Ethernet is wireless communication, but it's not. Ethernet requires wiring, and Wi-Fi is the wireless communication standard for modern computers.
To connect to the internet.
To connect to the internet or some other devices. It's really just a way to connect. Whether your Wi-Fi can go onto the internet depends on the router to see whether it has connectivity to the internet. So what I'll do next is I'm going to look at iOS apps, and just to see how many there are, because I just want to get some rough numbers of how many apps there are. All right.
You got the roll sheet, Professor?
Oh, that's right. Very good reminder. Okay, here's the row sheet. I reset, this is a new sheet, so we just start with that. Okay, so we'll just look at the number.
That's because Windows based and Windows Mac-based. Two different brands.
All right, let's see. Here is grade.
They're not. They don't cover that.
Okay, there has been 10 billion app downloads, but that doesn't tell you how many apps there are. Okay, how many can you choose from?
It's up at the top.
At the top?
Higher,
Close to a
higher,
million.
higher up.
700, no, yeah. That first paragraph, the very end of the first paragraph.
Oh,
Or
okay.
up a little higher. I think it said 700,000 apps. Look a little higher.
Right there.